Good evening, everyone. This is Grace Pejunk. I'm the Associate Director of the SEO Law Fellowship Program. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you to the SEO Law Fellowship Program info session that we will be hosting this evening. Today we have a great session planned for you, hopefully to answer a variety of questions and to give you a better understanding of the program and what we offer and the entire application process. We also have the director of the program, Benem Bowie, and several of our alumni that they will be sharing their experience with you. So just to check, can everyone hear me? So there's a chat portion to the bottom of the page. If you could maybe just type in yes, we can hear you, just to make sure that you're able to hear me. Let's see. Okay, perfect. So I see a lot of responses, so that's great. Excellent. All right, so just to give you an idea of what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to start off with introductions, so you get a sense of everyone that works for the program and the alumni. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the program overview to give you a sense of all the major components of the program. Then we'll talk a little bit about the students in the previous fellow class to give you a sense of who the students are. We'll also give you an example and share who some of our notable alumni. We'll talk about the application process, and also we'll end the portion of the session with the alumni sharing their experience, and then we'll leave a few minutes toward the end of the info session to take some questions from the audience. And the way that we'll be taking the questions will be that you'll be able to type in through the chat portion, and you can just type in your questions, and we'll be looking through them, and we'll answer what the most common questions are. And if for any reason we are not able to get to your specific questions due to the high volume of questions, we will, you could reach out to us individually and we can make sure to address your question. All right, so let's start right off with introductions. So as I mentioned earlier, our director, Benem Bowie, is here, so I'll let her introduce herself, and then we will go on and have the alumni introduce themselves as well. And well, before I hand it on to Vania, I'll introduce myself. So my name, as I said, is Grace Pejunk. I'm the Associate Director of the Fellowship Program, and I actually have been with the SEO organization for over 3 years now. I started off my career working at the New York Fed, doing educational outreach and diversity recruiting. That's how I became very interested in the diversity space. And then I worked with our sister program for the past 3 years, SEO Career, and now I transitioned to the fellowship program. So now I'll pass it on to Van Ann, who will introduce herself, and then the alumni will also just briefly introduce themselves to give you a sense of who they are.
Sure, thank you, Grace. Good evening, everyone. I am so excited to be speaking with you tonight. My name is Van Ann Bowie, and as Grace mentioned, I'm the director of the SEO Law Fellowship Program. Just a little bit about myself. I'm from Texas originally, born and raised. Went to college in Texas at Southern Methodist University before coming to New York, now almost 10 years ago, to begin my legal education. I started off at attending law school at New York Law School before transferring to Columbia Law, where I graduated in 2011. while I was in law school, I had the opportunity to intern for both of my summers at a large corporate law firm based here in New York, Proskauer Rose, where I ultimately began my legal career and worked for 5 years specializing in leveraged finance before coming over to SEO about a year ago, where I now run the fellowship program. I remember being in your shoes not too long ago, really, and from the time that I was really young, I had always wanted to be an attorney, but never really knew much about what to do in order to do that. My parents didn't really know any attorneys growing up. I was never exposed to any attorneys. And as immigrants, their understanding of the legal profession and their access to resources, knowledge, and information was somewhat limited. And so this is why I feel personally very connected to the mission of SEO. As the director of the law program, my goal is to help underrepresented minority law students succeed and excel in law school and in the legal profession at large, to be able to provide access to information and opportunities where it might have otherwise been difficult to obtain. So as we go through this webinar, I really do encourage you to be engaged with us, to ask us any questions you might have. As Grace mentioned, you can do so in the chat box in the corner of your screen. My hope is that you'll be able to leave this webinar with a much better understanding of what we do and our passion for helping young students like yourselves navigate the law firm and the legal profession.
Perfect, Vin, and thank you so much for that very detailed background and introduction to yourself. So now we'll move on to the alumni. If maybe we could start with Patricio, then Lilybell, and Leon. Just tell us a little bit about who you are, so that the students, the prospective students in the audience, can have a background of who you are.
Thank you, Grace, and hello, everyone. This is Patricio Martinez-Yompart. I'm a 3L at Columbia Law School, and I participated in the SEO Fellowship in the summer of 2015. I attended Cornell for undergrad, and before coming to Columbia, I worked in government in the criminal justice policy space, first here in New York for the municipal government, and then back home in Puerto Rico for the governor's office. I'm very interested in litigation and regulatory work. After graduating next May, I'm first clerking at the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, after which I'll be joining Covington and Burling in Washington, D.C.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Patricio. Lilybell, do you want to go next?
Yes, sure. Thank you so much, Grace, for hosting this, and hi, everyone. My name is Lilybell Davis. I'm also a 3L at Columbia Law School like Patricio. I was in SEO Law class of 2015. I'm originally from New Jersey, but I mostly grew up in Maryland, and I went to University of Maryland undergrad, where I was an economics major, and then during my summers in undergrad, I worked at Google, so I was very interested in law and technology heading into law school, and also business because of my econ major. So I went straight through to Columbia, and while at Columbia, I've been very interested in corporate finance and just the general corporate area. And so next semester, I'm actually doing a corporate finance program at Oxford. And over the summers, while in law school, I've worked at Simpson Thacher, where I was for SEO, and I've also worked at Skadden. And so after graduation, I plan on going to Delaware to do a clerkship at the Delaware Chancery Court, and then after that, I'll join a firm in New York.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lilybell. Leon, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, guys. This is Leon. I'm originally from Los Angeles. I attended undergrad at the University of Southern California, where I studied international relations. I took 3 years off before starting here at Stanford, where I'm now at 2L, in which time I spent working mostly in consulting. Last summer, I worked at Munger, Tolles & Olson in LA. This upcoming summer, I'll be at Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen & Katz in New York, where hopefully will practice after graduating law school. And my focus is mergers and acquisitions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone, for your introductions. And, the prospective students that are joining us tonight, as you can see, our alumni come from a variety of backgrounds and have a variety of interests. Obviously, are all very accomplished. So I hope that, during the Q&A section later today, and, as they share more about their experience later in the presentation, you can get an even better and stronger sense of who they are, and potentially in maybe the next year, in the next few years, you can be one of these alumni sharing your experience in your legal career, and as a member of the SEO fellowship program. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. So now we're going to jump into the SEO Law Fellowship overview. So the goal here is to give you a sense of what the fellowship is, the different components, and Van Ann is actually, I'm going to turn it over to Van Ann. She's going to give she'll give the overview and also talk about alumni that have gone through the program. So Van Ann, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. All right, so in short, as I can see on the PowerPoint, the program offers scholarships, academic preparation, career development training, along with an internship at a corporate law firm to underrepresented law students this summer before students actually start law school. Students who are accepted into the program will begin their summer with a 2-week intensive academic training program in New York called the Law Institute, which we will go over in a little bit more detail in a few minutes, before starting an 8-week internship at one of our partner firms across the country. Students are also compensated for the entire 10-week program. And in addition to the summer program, one thing that we've really been intentional about adding to our program is ongoing academic support for students throughout their first year of law school. For those of you that don't know, in law school, if you're interested in working at a law firm after graduation, you have to go through what's called an on-campus interview or on-campus recruitment in order to obtain an internship, which typically occurs this summer. But the internship will occur the summer between your second and your third year, but the recruiting process for that occurs at the beginning of your second year of law school. And so at the time that you go through on-campus recruitment, firms will only have your first year law school grades in front of them in order to review your candidacy. And so because of that, SEO spends a lot of time focusing on trying to ensure that our students' grades are, really at the top of their class during their first year, because we recognize how important those first year, even first semester grades are to securing a first year internship and then a second year internship as well. So you'll hear us talk a lot about the academic support that we have in our program. Okay, so moving on. As I mentioned, the fellowship program kicks off with the Law Institute, which is a 2-week program that occurs in New York. During the Institute, we bring in legal writing instructors to host small group seminars for students in groups of about 20 students or so. These seminars are designed to help students develop key skills that we think are really going to be important for you to know to hit the ground running once you start school. Skills like how to read a legal opinion, how to brief a case, how to prepare a law school outline, how to perform a legal analysis, how to draft a legal memo, and even how to write an A+ law school exam answer. We also invite law school professors to come in and teach a mock class on one of the core 1L subject matters, such as criminal law or property law. And just as they would in any real law school class, they will assign our students cases for them to read and brief ahead of time. and engage our students in the Socratic method. So this is really intended to give students a better understanding of what to expect and how to prepare for a real law school class. At the end of each week, we will administer a mock exam based on the lecture that will be graded by one of our instructors. And this is also to give you a better understanding of what a law school exam looks like and what will be expected of you when writing the exam answer. So in addition to the academic component, we will also have attorneys come in to speak with students on how to navigate their internships and legal careers at corporate law firms. These attorneys will talk to you all about how to handle a summer assignment and how to network and start building relationships with attorneys. In the evenings, we'll also have panel discussions and networking receptions where we invite attorneys from all of our various partner law firms to come and speak to our students about the various practice areas that they work in so that students can get a better understanding of the distinctions amongst the different practice areas. Following the panel discussions, students will also have the opportunity to actually practice their networking skills and really to start building and expanding their own networks and building those relationships with attorneys by mingling with all of the attorneys from our partner firms at these networking receptions. So this is really an opportunity for you to start developing relationships with attorneys in the profession. Okay, so after the institute, students will head off to begin their internships. Last year, we placed students in 11 cities across the country. The list of locations is currently on our website, so if you haven't yet, please do take a look at that. For this summer, we're still working on adding a few more partners into the program, so we might even be able to offer internship opportunities in additional locations. So please do continue to review our website and stay engaged with us to find out more information about that. While you're at your firms, each student will have a different summer internship experience depending on the firm that they're with. All of our firms have very different and very unique programs. But regardless, you will have plenty of opportunities to be exposed to a wide network of attorneys and mentors at your firm, to attend summer events with other summer associates and attorneys to get to better know the culture of each of the firm that you're with, and also to engage in assignments that are tailored to your experience level. We often get the question of, what kinds of assignments should students be expected to work on, given that they haven't started law school yet. And I just wanted to mention, in the event that you haven't had a legal internship yet in the past, or you haven't been a paralegal or had any other sort of law firm or experience, and that should not dissuade you from applying to the program. There's absolutely no legal experience necessary in order to do the kind of work that our firms will assign to you. They're very much aware of the status of your status coming into the firms, and so that's not something that you should be worried about, and they will try to work with you in giving you assignments that are commensurate to your experience level. In addition, SEO does provide a coach to work with you throughout the summer. So in the event that you do have questions about certain assignments or how to find certain information, you have someone who will be with you every step of the way. You'll have their phone numbers, email addresses, and you should feel free to contact them whenever you need. They'll also be holding regular weekly or bi-weekly phone calls with you also just to to check in and see if there are, other sorts of circumstances that you want to talk through in terms of navigating various aspects of the firm. And another common question that we receive is related to housing costs in the event that students have to relocate for their internship. So our students are expected to pay for their own housing and to pay for their own ways to and from the internship locations, which would be the same as if you were an actual summer associate at any one of our partner law firms. They would also expect you, regardless of where you're coming from, what school you attend, to be able to pay your way to and from the internship location and for your own housing as well. However, that being said, SEO does have a loan fund where we can provide students with a sum of money, completely interest-free at the beginning of the summer program to help offset some of those initial upfront costs as you start getting settled in. I do want to note, and we've mentioned before, but the internship, and not just the internship, but the entire 10-week experience is paid. So students will be compensated anywhere from $1,000 to $1,600 per week over the course of the 10-week program. And so that should also help defray some of those costs as well. But one other thing to note, because a lot of our students are in similar situations, we all know that you're about to head off to law school, potentially take on, a load of debt, and so we want to try to be as helpful as we can in terms of trying to help you secure housing. And so we will provide you with a list of places that you can start. But just off the top of my head, we've also had students secure housing in lesser expensive locations outside of Manhattan, in New Jersey, in White Plains, New York, which is just north of Manhattan, further out in Brooklyn and out in Queens. And so there are ways to help minimize the financial burden with respect to housing. We can absolutely help connect you with other students in the program in case you'd like to find a roommate for the summer. Anything that we can do to help that process, help ease that process, we absolutely want to try to do. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so in addition to the internship, or once you go off to the internship, we do want to continue working with you to help strengthen your writing skills. We provide you with so much really good, useful information at the beginning of the summer and the 2 weeks during the institute. And the last thing that we want is for you to go off to your internships and then forget or not be able to engage or practice any of those skills that we've spent so much time helping you to develop. And so during the summer, while you're at your internships, we will assign each student to a writing coach who will assign about 4 assignments to you over the course of the summer. These assignments are really designed to simulate what a real law school exam question would look like and give you an opportunity to draft an exam answer and have it be reviewed and graded by an actual law school legal writing instructor so that you can have an understanding as to the areas that you might need to continue to improve upon. In addition to the Writing Academy, the writing assignments over the course of the summer, we do want to continue to provide ongoing academic support throughout your first year of law school. And so what we've done in the past and this year in particular, well, what we've done in the past is we've utilized online resources such as Quimby. I'm not sure if you've already heard about Quimby, but it's a resource that a lot of law students like using to help supplement their courses in school. So we've paid for subscriptions to that resource. The American Bar Association also provides a free 3-month subscription to any law student who's a law student member of the ABA, and so we also encourage students to sign up for that membership in order to take advantage of that discount as well. After our Quimby subscription is up, we've also sent out books on practice exam questions and multiple choice questions to give students just more opportunities to practice answering exam questions and multiple choice questions. And then this year, we've hired a tutor to do online office hours on each of the core 1L subject matters for our students about 4 or 5 times a semester. And what she does is about a week in advance before the office hours, she will distribute sample practice questions for students to walk through on their own. And then everyone will get on the video conference and she'll walk through how students should be expected to tackle those exam questions. So again, really just giving students an opportunity to understand how to perform a legal analysis, what's going to be expected of them on the exam, give them additional opportunities to practice exam writing so that when they walk into that exam in December, they feel as comfortable as possible tackling those questions. Okay. Okay. So just wanted to tell you all a little bit about what our past, the 2017 class of fellows looks like. We often get questions about backgrounds and experiences. Again, as you can see from this list, and I don't want to read all of these bullet points, you can see that our fellows are quite diverse in race, ethnicity, foreign languages that they speak, places that they've lived and worked and studied, professions that they might have come from. We have a mix of students who are coming straight through from undergrad, but also students who have worked for maybe 1 or 2 years, up to students who have who are really looking at the legal profession as a second career, as a career change. Our students come from backgrounds in politics, in the nonprofit space. As I mentioned again, it's absolutely not necessary that you have formal law firm or corporate training, although some of our students do come from that backgrounds as well. And they've been involved in a lot of other types of activities, team-based sports, debaters, and things like that. So we pull from, we very much look at a student's application in its entirety. We want to create a very diverse class of students where they can really learn from each other's experiences and backgrounds. And so we really do make an effort to look at some of the soft skills and other kinds of backgrounds and experiences outside of just GPA and LSAT in determining what each student can really bring to our class. Okay. So on this next slide, you can see all of the firms that partnered with us this past summer and in what locations. I do, and this infographic, just FYI, is also on our website. So if you haven't already, I do encourage you to, look through these firms that we partner with in the various locations that you might be interested in. See, if there are certain firms that you might be interested in interning with or just learning more about. All of these firms are on Twitter, so you can find information there. On social media, they oftentimes post real-time, articles about deals and cases that they're working on. So that can be a really good way to find out more updated information about these firms. You can also set up Google alerts for certain firms that you're most interested in, which when I was going through the recruiting process was something that I did and came in handy for me as well. And so I definitely do encourage you to do that when you get a chance. Okay. So, the SEO Law program has been around since 1986. And over the course of, the past 40-some years, we've had some just really impressive folks come through our program, and so we just wanted to highlight a few of them here, and some of them you might even recognize. Julian Castro it was a former SEO Law Fellow. He was the former U.S. Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under President Barack Obama. Also, I just wanted to highlight Judge Derek Watson, who is the judge from Hawaii who granted a temporary restraining order blocking President Trump's travel bans from going into effect. So as you can see from this slide, we have folks who have started their careers in corporate law and then have moved on to work in politics, in judgeships in the federal government, and are able to really make a big impact on our society at large. On the next slide, just a few more of our alums that I also wanted to highlight. So Nicole Isaac is now the head of U.S. Public Policy at LinkedIn. Brandon Etheridge is the General Counsel of the Baltimore Ravens, and Meme Umana was recently, or about a year ago, was elected the first Black female president of the Harvard Law Review. Again, as you can see, our alums have had really illustrious career paths and have, even if they're not in corporate law anymore, have moved on to a variety of industries and professions. They're in technology and business and politics, and are really making a very big impact on our society. Okay, so now I'll kick it off and back to Grace to walk through the application process.
Oh, there. Sorry about that. I think I was actually on mute and I had started speaking already, so I do apologize about that. So as I was saying, in order to apply to the SEO Law Fellowship Program, it's a very, very easy process. All you have to do is go to our website, www.seolaw.org. If you haven't had a chance to explore the website, I really encourage you to look around. There's a lot of very helpful information. We have an entire section of frequently asked questions, a little bit about the basic eligibility requirements. So we do require at least a 3.0 GPA for your undergraduate coursework, and you must be enrolled or have graduated from a 4-year college or university. As Danny Ann said, we accept students that are coming straight from college and others that have anywhere between 1 to 3 years of experience, and students that sometimes have advanced degrees. This past year we had a student from the Harvard Kennedy School, you know, students with over 5, 6, 8 years of experience. So whatever point in your career you are, the only requirement is that you are, you know, were enrolled or graduated from a 4-year institution. Given that our overall mission is to increase diversity within the legal field, one of the things that we look for are students that self-identify as an underrepresented minority, and also students that are in the process of applying to law school for matriculation in the fall of 2018. So if you don't plan to apply in the fall of 2018, but you still want to receive information and, you know, stay involved with the organization, we would still encourage you to apply. And then once you are ready to matriculate to law school, you can always come back and update your application and let us know. And then lastly, the other thing that we look for in students are students that are interested in exploring a career in corporate law. All right, so then the next slide, we have a little chart or flow of what the application process looks like. So the first step of the application process would be to go to the website and submit the basic application form, which should really only take anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes. It asks you very basic information such as your name, the undergraduate school you went to, your GPA, your LSAT score. Now, one thing I do want to mention that we typically get various questions is you will be able to select your geographical preferences. So my recommendation for that would be to think about what markets you might want to practice in after you graduate from law school. And as Vanian had mentioned, we currently place students at over 11 cities across the United States, and when you look at the application, you'll be able to rank your preferences, your primary, your secondary, and your third preference. But I would encourage you to think about where do you ultimately want to practice when selecting the geographical preferences. Another note would be that once you submit the initial application form, you unfortunately will not be able to go back and change the information from that specific form. So if you need to make an update to your GPA or your LSAT score or your geographical preferences, you would have to, or we recommend that you email us and we can go ahead and make those updates and changes on your behalf. So that's the first part of the application. Now, the second part of your application, which is what, you know, we would need these documents in order for your application to be complete. So there's a total of 5 required documents, and the last one, the diversity statement, is optional. But if you are in the process of applying to law school, the chances are is that you already have a diversity statement. So, you know, if you already have it, you know, it would be a very easy addition to your application. So the first one, the SEO Law resume, is we actually provide you with a template on the application form. So we do, and it is very important to submit a resume, a one-page resume in the SEO Law resume template. Now, if one question that we often get is students have a resume that is more than one page, so we would recommend submitting the SEO Law resume, and then if you have another resume that's potentially longer, you can also upload it, but just make sure that you also have your one-page SEO Law resume in your application, because if not, your application will not be considered complete. Now, the second component is your undergraduate transcript or transcripts from any other academic institutions that you have attended. At this point in the application process, all we really need is an unofficial copy, which typically you can just download from your academic institution, and you can just upload. Just make sure that it does include the cumulative GPA, which is the one thing that we'll be looking at. Now, the third thing that we are of the supplemental documents is your personal statement, which is something that if you're in the process of applying to law school, the chances are is that something that you already have. So, hopefully it will be a very easy thing to add to the application. We do also request a headshot. Now, this does not have to be a very, professional headshot. You don't need to go out and pay a photographer, $100 to take a picture, but it could be something as simple as putting on your suit and perhaps asking your friend to take a picture of you with your iPhone, and then you can go ahead and upload that. The fifth thing is a list of law schools where you plan to apply. I believe we allow up to listing up to 10 law schools. And then in that same page, you can list where you are in the process. So have you applied? Have you been waitlisted? Have you been accepted? Have you been denied? And we do ask that you please keep that page updated, and that is something that you would be able to just log back into the application portal and update yourself. So as you're getting decisions from schools, please make sure to keep that updated. And if you, for any reason, need any help with updating that, of course, you can always reach out to us. And then the sixth thing and the optional thing is the diversity statement, which, as I mentioned earlier, if you are applying to law school, the chances are is that you already have at least a structured statement that maybe you can modify a little bit before uploading it and making it specific for the SEO Law program. Now, moving on to the interview stage. So this year we will be actually traveling. Dan and I will be traveling across the country because we want to be able to have in-person interviews with all of our prospective candidates. We're actually, some of the bigger cities that we will be visiting are listed here. So as you can see, we're going to be everywhere from New York City to Dallas and Houston and LA, and then other locations. So students will be responsible for getting themselves to the location. And we do require in-person interviews unless there are excruciating circumstances, or if perhaps if you're studying abroad and obviously can't come to New York City or in any of the other in-person locations. In those types of cases, we will grant a video or a Skype interview. In terms of timing for the interviews, so students that have already applied will start to receive invitations for interviews in early to mid-January, and we'll probably start the interview process in February and March. So if you haven't yet submitted an application, I strongly encourage you to start putting your documents together because, as I said, in the next few weeks we will be sending out the first round of interview invitations. All right, so then moving on to the admissions decision. So as I was saying, so the keeping the updated law school tab is really, really important, especially later on in the spring semester as you're starting to get either, hopefully a lot of acceptance letters from the law schools that you applied to, and we will be sending out all admissions decisions by April 30th, and we also will be requiring the seat deposit confirmation from any schools that you, or the school that you've decided to apply. So that will also be required by April 30th. All right, so let's move on to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit. So actually in this slide, we have, just to give you a sense of the geographic placement of where all our fellows were placed last summer. So as you can see, the majority of the fellows are in New York City or in the East Coast, but for students that are interested in other markets, there's definitely an opportunity to do that as well. All right, so then the last part that I wanted to touch on in the admissions decision, and a common question that we often get, is what is the firm match process like? How does that happen? So just wanted to touch a base on that. So some of the main factors that we take into account when matching interns at our partner firms are, for example, geographical location. So in the infographic that Van Ann showed you earlier, you could see where different firms have, interns. So where you decide that your geographical location is will be a factor in terms of what firms that you might be matched with. Not all the firms offer positions in different cities. Another thing that we do take into consideration is what law practice area you want to go into. Firms, all of these firms are very large firms, so they do have a wide variety of practice areas, but some are stronger in some areas than others, so we try to take that into account in terms of what does the student eventually want to practice. Other things we take into account are the firm culture. So, every firm is different, has a different culture. Some are, very, very large. Others are more mid-sized. So, what does the student prefer? So, and all of this comes up during the interview. We have a very detailed conversation with you, and at the end of the day, we've been partnering with these firms for many, many years, and we have a pretty good sense of where we think a student would ultimately thrive and do the best, and fit in the best. So we use all that knowledge from all the years that we've been working with students. And lastly, other things that we look for. So in certain firms, sometimes potentially they might want a student that, for example, is fluent in Spanish or Portuguese, because they do a lot of business with Latin American firms, so we take that into account. Sometimes, for example, if you will be working with intellectual property or something in biotechnology, they might want a student with a science background or a coding background. So sometimes that also goes into account as we are determining where the students will be placed. And we'll talk more in depth during the interview process to ensure that we try to match you where you will be the most successful and hopefully have the best summer experience possible.
And sorry, just to add on to that, Grace, that was a really good summary of how we do the matching process. I just wanted to add that although we may ask you for specific preferences on firms that you might be interested in working for or exploring, we do also ask you to really trust us in our process and the decision-making process, because there may be a chance that we end up placing you at another firm that may not have been at the top of your mind, or maybe even a firm that you might not really know much about. But there is typically a reason for us doing that, and that again comes from many years of practice and experience in the legal profession and involvement in the bar associations, and just years of working with students and firms, and really having a very deep understanding as to the place that we think specific students might thrive in best. So we do ask that you keep that in mind as we go through the matching process as well.
Yeah. And one other thing that I just wanted to add on is one common question that we get is, sometimes students are ultimately interested in potentially working in the public policy space, in government, in the nonprofit space. And as you can see from our partners, all our partners are corporate law. So sometimes the question is, well, I don't really want to work in corporate law. I only want to work in the nonprofit space. And one thing that I always try to share with students is the value of working in corporate law, even if it's only for a few years, right? By participating in this program and getting the corporate law experience doesn't mean that you have to stay in corporate law for the entirety of your career. We're not going to expect that you go and become a partner at these firms, but for those of you that are interested in going into government, into the nonprofit space, I mean, the honest truth that these firms have the resources to train you. You would get an opportunity to work on a lot of pro bono cases, and really just the training and the resources and the network that you build by working at these firms, even if it is only for a few years, is really invaluable, and really gives you the opportunity to then go and use and take that training, that network, and make a potentially even bigger impact working in the nonprofit space. And I mean, we have an example of that in our program. So Vanian actually worked at Proskauer, which is one of our partner firms, for about over 5 years, and I mean the experience she brings, the knowledge has done magnificent things for the program, and that's just one example. In the previous slides where you saw the notable alumni, as you can see, I mean they're really in so many different diverse areas and different jobs. I mean, Julian Castro, for example, now really making such an impact in San Antonio and his local community. So for those of you that might be wondering, well, I don't really want to go into corporate law, is think about the long-term benefits of potentially exploring this and at least giving it some thought. So yeah, so just wanted to put that out there for those of you that might be interested in the nonprofit space. I don't know, Vanian, if you might want to add anything else.
Yeah, I absolutely 100% completely agree with you, Grace. It's actually a fairly common path for students to start in corporate law and then, go on to other positions in government, in the public sector. Again, the training that you'll be able to get at a corporate law firm if you stick it out for a few years is just unlike anything else that you'll be able to receive, to be able to work with some of the most brilliant legal minds in the country on some of the biggest deals in the nation, in the world, to see to have to work under those kinds of rigorous circumstances. It will absolutely train you to be the best attorney that you can be, and then you can take those skills and knowledge and leverage that into whatever other position you end up wanting to go into next. And I hope perhaps some of our alums might even be able to speak a little bit to that too.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right, so again here, just wanted to share this slide again, just so you can kind of get, now that we've discussed all the different components of the application process, just wanted to give you one last look of what the process looks like. And during the Q&A portion of the webinar in a few minutes, any questions that you have, we can go ahead and take those questions and clarify any questions you might have. All right, so now we're going to transition over to the fellow experience portion of the info session. So as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 alumni from the class of 2015 who are here to just share a little bit about what their experience was like. They already introduced themselves, and we have their names and their photos here, so you can see who they are. So I mean, if I could, maybe we can start with Patricio. We started with you during introduction, so we'll go ahead and start with Lilybell, if that's okay. And Lilybell, if you could maybe just tell us a little bit about what your favorite experience, what your favorite part of the SEO Law Fellowship experience was, and then maybe talk about an academic benefit of the fellowship, and maybe one example of how it has helped you build your professional network.
Sure. So again, my name is Lilybell Davis. I'm a 3L at Columbia. There's honestly so many great things about the SEO Law Fellowship program. One of the things that stands out for me, like Van Ann, I didn't really come from a family of corporate lawyers. So coming into this field, having this broad network and this broad support system was just so invaluable. I mean, the friends I made during SEO, I'm still close friends with now. When I was in 1L, I always had someone I could talk to, be it one of my classmates who did SEO or the staff at SEO, some of them had been to Columbia or had similar experiences. So I just felt like I gained so much institutional knowledge that I just don't know how I would have gotten otherwise. And that's just been amazing. One academic benefit, Van Ann mentioned in the beginning, there is a academic 2-week program that SEO hosts that gives you kind of a overlook of the types of courses you'll be taking in law school, and also really helps you with your writing. And for me, writing was a very, very big thing, because as an economics major, I didn't really write a lot of papers in undergrad. So one of the things I was worried about in law school was how my writing would stack up. And SEO gives you a very focused understanding of what professors are looking for in law school exams, and it's learnable. Like, you can learn it, and it's not that hard, but it's not always taught. So SEO teaches you that, and that gives you a huge leg up when you're taking exams, and it gives you a huge leg up when you're trying to get those top grades. And like I said, my professional network was just expanded so much during SEO, particularly in the panels that we would have during our SEO experience that Van Ann also mentioned. So there's usually a panel about every 1 to 2 weeks. And after that panel, there's a networking reception where there are a ton of lawyers from all the top firms in New York, where you can just speak with them on a very casual basis and get their business cards, and you can follow up and have coffee and et cetera. And you can just learn so much about the different firms and the different cultures. So when you're applying for 1L and for 2L, you just have such a better understanding of what to look for. So those are the main things. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Lily Bell, for sharing your experience. So we'll move on to Leon, if that's okay.
Yeah, it sounds great. So as far as what I got out of SEO, I think the first thing that was really valuable for me is just getting a better sense of the legal landscape. Probably like a lot of you out there listening, I really had no idea about what I wanted to do in the law. I had a background in politics, so I thought maybe constitutional law or civil rights, but I really didn't even really know what that meant. And I think the great thing about the SEO partner firms is that these are all very large firms that practice in virtually every area of the law. So during my SEO summer, I worked in private equity, I worked in commercial litigation, I worked in regulatory matters, and that gave me a much better sense of what I wanted to do by the end of the summer, which in turn sort of informed what classes I was going to take at law school. It informed the extracurriculars I got involved with, and ultimately what jobs I applied to. I know some of you out there might be thinking, why does that matter? I'm not in law school yet. I have 3 years to figure that out. But it's the case that you have to pretty much decide what kind of lawyer you want to be pretty quickly in law school. You'll all start law school in August, September, and by December and January, you're already deciding where you want to work your 1L summer. That next August, you'll be in on-campus interviewing, deciding where you're going to work after you graduate. So it's a huge advantage to sort of know what you want to do going in, and I think SEO really helps you get a good sense of that. And as Label mentioned, another huge thing is the network. My best friends at Stanford are all SEOs. I'm still in contact with a lot of the folks from SEO. I know a lot of people in SEO made very good friends there because I'm still Facebook friends with a lot of my classmates from SEO, and it's I think SEO just really lends itself to making really great organic connections. When you're in Law Institute for those 2 weeks, it's just really exciting to be there. Everyone's just gotten into law school. We're all people of color, and you all have that in common. There's energy there. And on top of all that, you're in New York. You're getting a paycheck from a law firm. You're going to happy hour. You're going out at night, and it's just a great way to build organic connections with a really incredible group of people. It's a really selective program, so it's a great way to start your career with a network of 100 people who are all going to be great lawyers. And then finally, on the sort of academic piece, I was not a good student as an undergraduate. I had a 3.5 GPA and a pretty in the easy major. I did not do very well in the LSAT, so I was really concerned when I came to Stanford I would not do very well here. I think one huge thing SEO did for me on the test prep is that it helped me just get good grades, and really for the first time in my life, and that really opens up a lot of doors. Even at top schools, the Columbias and the Harvards and the Yales, it's still really competitive. So having that competitive advantage is a really big difference. And then finally, I'll just wrap up to say, the SEO partner firms and the SEO program itself are extremely prestigious, and the legal world is very prestige obsessed. So when you're recruiting, whether that's for public interest or for law firms, whatever you want to do, employers are going to be very impressed that you participate in this program. You're just going to have a huge advantage over anyone who didn't participate. So I can't think of a good reason not to participate. So I highly encourage everyone to apply.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Leon. Great summary of your experience. Patricio, let's go ahead and move on to you.
Sure. So I really echo everything that Lilibel and Leon just said. To me, this may sound like an oxymoron, but I think the SEO program was especially helpful for my career in kind of clarifying the types of work that I do not want to do. And I think, as Leon said, you have to pretty much decide your first year of law school, the type of attorney that you want to be, and the practice areas that you want to explore, and time goes really fast when you start law school. And as I said earlier, I had worked in government before coming to Columbia. Back in undergrad, I never interned at a corporate law firm, so I was really unfamiliar with what the work looked like, and I wanted to before getting to law school, obtain more clarity about that space and what kind of practice groups I could see myself pursuing, and just get a general awareness of the work that is out there. So I spent my summer in New York working at a firm that does a lot of corporate and transactional work, which I had curiosity about, but I was not sure if it was something that I wanted to do. And I learned ton, and I came to become familiar with just a lot of legal slang about how attorneys refer to practice areas and the work that they do. That proved incredibly helpful going into my first year and starting to outline the path that I wanted to take. As I started looking for summer jobs and beyond. So knowing and going through my SEO summer and kind of realizing that transactional work was not for me, and kind of cementing my interest in litigation and regulatory work, and perhaps work that is more generally exposed to government and public policy, as Grace and Venan both said, you don't have to be entering and doing SEO and spending a couple of years working in a law firm does not mean that you'll spend your entire career doing that. And it's in many ways a great stepping stone in terms of acquiring a skill set, acquiring a network, and really learning how the law gets practiced from a very high level quality of work. And I think that's something that you take away from working at a corporate law firm, and that the SEO program gives you exposure to. So knowing that I wanted to gain that exposure and kind of the outlook, even though I'm not committed in the long term to a career in corporate law, I think that was really the best part of the program. Now, two experiences that I think stand out, one academic and one in terms of the network and professional development. The first is I think the institute, as they've been saying, you take classes with law school professors, and for example, just taking a 2-hour session in civil procedure, which is one of those core first semester of law school classes, and just reading 2 of the foundational cases in that class and being able to arrive your one-all fall with kind of a basic knowledge of some cases in your foundational courses. I think it's a really terrific way of getting a head start, and being a little bit ahead of the pack in terms of knowing the material and having some basic knowledge of the language and the concepts that you're playing with. So I think that was very helpful, and really being exposed to that knowledge right away before you start the internship. And then in terms of building a network, again, I echo everything that Lilibel and Leon said, but just to highlight an experience that I had after finishing my one-all year, something that I thought was kind of invigorating and reaffirming after a year of a lot of hard work and at times, as you probably imagine, a lot of self-doubt, because it's definitely a very challenging year, even if you're at a top school and you know that you'll have many job opportunities and you have a lot of resources. It's still challenging. It's still mentally draining. But one thing that I think kind of exemplifies the SEO program at its best is a week after I finished my one-all year and one-all exams, I returned to the law firm where I spent my SEO summer just to catch up with my mentors from that summer, speak of how the year went, and just generally get their advice on what I was thinking for the on-campus interview process I was going into when I came back from that summer. So really just having people in the real world, in the real legal world out there who are already looking out for me as I was finishing my one-all year and preparing to go through interviews, I thought was just a very encouraging and reaffirming way of moving ahead and moving towards my second year of law school. And for me, that really captures the greatness of the SEO program.
Thank you, Patricio, for sharing your experience and all that wonderful information. I think, well, thank you to all of you guys for sharing that experience with all the prospective students that we have today. All right, so I know that we're running a little bit over the end time, so if some of you need to jump off, we completely understand, but I would like to take a few minutes for the next portion of the info session, which is the Q&A session. I've looked through the chat box, and we have a kind of a few trends of questions. So I thought that maybe I could start off by answering some of the common questions that we're getting, and then I'll answer some of them, and then Van Ann could potentially answer some of them as well. And if you have specific questions for any of the alumni panelists, please feel free to specify it in the box, just so that I know who to direct the question to. So I'll start off by answering some of the common questions that have been brought up. So the first one relates to how many fellows are selected each year. So the exact number of fellows really varies year to year, but to give you an example, this past year we had 100 fellows, and that was our largest class ever. Before that, it would range in the high 80s, the mid 90s. Last year was 100, and this year we are expecting a similar class size, maybe between 105 and 110 fellows. The second question was regarding deadline dates for submitting the application. So the final deadline is on March 5th, but as I said earlier, we will be starting to send out the interview invitations as early as January. So if you already have if you are already in the process of applying to law school, the chances are you already have a lot of the documents that you would need to apply to the program. So I would encourage you to apply sooner rather than later, so that you can, start the interview process as well. Now, while I'm on the topic of interviews, another question I had was, will all candidates be interviewed? The answer is no, not everyone will be interviewed. We will be selecting that we will be selecting candidates for interviews. Other trends of questions were regarding GPA requirements. Is 3.0 the minimum? The answer is yes. So students are required to have at least a 3.0 GPA in their undergraduate studies. Let's see, the next question was, when will students be notified if you are accepted? So all students will receive an admissions decision by April 28, potentially earlier, but by April 28th, most students will have a decision. And then, so one question, Van Ann, that I'll throw over to you is, there was one question about what are the practice areas that the internships offer. Can you give potential examples of some of the assignments that interns might expect to do over their summer internship? So I'll pass that on over to you.
Yeah, sure. So our partner law firms really engage in a wide variety of practice areas with respect to corporate law. And so what corporate law really means is any kind of law that a company or corporation might need a law firm service for in order to provide. So that can be anything from transactional work, which could relate to mergers and acquisitions, or financing and acquisition, or doing an IPO. It could also relate to litigation, commercial litigation, real estate purchase deals. It could also mean labor and employment. So our firms have a wide variety of practice areas, and it really varies from firm to firm. We have some firms that are very internationally focused, and so they do a lot of cross-border deals. And then we have other firms that perhaps focus more on one area as compared to others. So perhaps they focus really more on the financial services area or labor and employment. And so understanding these differences amongst all of the firms is really why we try to have very robust conversations with you all during the interview process to get a sense of the kinds of areas of law that you might be interested in exploring. And we realize that you may not know exactly what you want to practice in, and that's completely okay, but we like to have a conversation with you about what you're thinking, and that will allow us to have a better idea as to the kind of firm that might allow you to have to be exposed to those kinds of opportunities that you're interested in being exposed to.
Perfect. Thank you, Vanian, for addressing that. And if I could pass on another question to you. So I'm going to combine, there seems to be various questions regarding the law school that students choose. So could you maybe comment a little bit about where they decide to go to law school? Does it impact your chances of getting into the fellowship? They've remarked that the alumni that are present are attending, top law schools. So how does that factor into the admissions decision?
Sure. So SEO is a fairly selective program. That being said, we do have students who do attend school outside of just the top 14 or 15 law schools. The law schools that are represented in our class is largely dictated by the types of schools that our partner firms typically recruit from. And so, sometimes it may include students from the top schools, and other times it may include a wide variety of other schools. In particular, some of our more regional locations might pull from schools who have students that are more likely or inclined to practice in their own geographical location. So Emory, for example, in Atlanta, or UCLA, or some of the other schools out in California for LA. So that is sort of how we are able to gauge the types of students and schools that are represented in our program. So that being said, I just want to have a wider conversation with you all about selection of schools, just generally, as you're going through this process. And this doesn't really have anything related to SEO, but having been in the legal profession now for 10 years, and as our alumni alluded to, the legal profession, unfortunately, is still, quite fixated on prestige of law school. And so regardless of whether you want to go to a corporate law firm, even if you want to go straight into a nonprofit organization, those positions are still very competitive. And so I really encourage everyone to try to get into the absolute best law school that you can get into. Because your employment opportunities are going to be very different depending on the law school that you end up attending. And I'll give you an example of that. I mean, I started at New York Law School, which is I forget exactly the rank now, but at New York Law School, they only allowed the top 15% of students to even go through their traditional on-campus recruitment process, to even be exposed to these law firms. But not just that, But that sort of got me in the door, being in the top 15%. But then they would just send over all of our resumes to each of the law firms, and then the law firms actually got to hand select the students that they wanted to actually speak with. So even if you were in the top 15%, again, at the time, I don't know if their policies might have changed, but even if you were in the top 15%, that didn't guarantee by any means an interview at any one of these law firms. Contrast that with the second I got admitted and ended up at Columbia Law School, we must have had 200 law firms coming to us, to campus, to interview, and meet with, all of the Columbia Law students. And the way that Columbia and a lot of other top law schools do their on-campus recruiting process is somewhat of a blind process. And so law firms actually don't really have any or very little say in as to who they get to interview. The law schools and the law students have more say and control over that process. And so just by virtue of having transferred, I was exposed to hundreds of more law firms than I would have had the opportunity to meet with when I was at New York Law School, and ended up getting interviews just through the blind computer algorithm process that they have. I received interviews with 20-some law firms just through that process. And so, I imagine that I think that experience is pretty common, and not just for corporate law, but even if you're interested in nonprofit work, if you're interested in government, probably even more so if you're interested in going into government, if you're interested in pursuing a clerkship, especially a federal clerkship, the law school that you choose does matter. So what I always try to encourage students as they're thinking about law school is, really focus on your application, focus on your LSAT, try to make sure that you get the best possible LSAT that you can. If you, didn't get where you wanted to this year, perhaps consider even waiting another year so that you can have some extra time to study and really try to get that LSAT score up even more, because the law school that you decide to go to really matters in so many ways, not just for SEO.
Excellent. Thank you, Vanian, for that very, detailed and honest answer to the law school question. So I'm just going to briefly go over some other common questions that we received. So the first one deals with letters of recommendation. Do you need any letters of recommendation to submit an application? The answer is no. We do not require any letters of recommendation. Also, regarding the supplemental documents, when are they due? So we encourage you to upload and submit all of the supplemental documents at your earliest convenience, because the application is not considered complete, and we won't be able to continue reviewing your application until you have submitted all of the supplemental documents. Now, when you submit the initial part of the application form, you will get a confirmation that we received it, but you will not get a confirmation when you upload the individual supplemental documents. But if you are missing any documents, we will reach out to you via email to let you know what you're missing. But again, I would encourage you to complete your application and upload the supplemental documents as soon as you can, because we won't be able to review your application until we have all the supplemental documents. The next question dealt with page limits for the personal statement. There are no page limits. You are free to write as much as you'd like and upload it to your application. And then just 3 more questions. One is regarding the SEO Law template And I touched on it when we were discussing the admissions process. So the SEO Law template, you can find it in the application form. So when you log in, there will be the template that you can download it. If for any reason you can't find it, feel free to reach out to us and we can always email you the template. And then, so one question, Vanian, and this one I will direct to you. A student was wondering if we have had any students in the past that have pursued a combined degree, so for example, a JD MBA, and how do we view that in the admissions process?
Sure. So we have had students do that. I know of one student from 2 years ago who is getting a JD MBA, and another student from this past class who's applying for the MBA program at her school as well. And I think that's completely fine. It is a we don't have an official view one way or another, but we do, want to know whether that's the case and what your plans are for that. That's something that we'd also have to disclose and discuss with the partner firms. From their vantage point, they're used to seeing JD MBAs coming into their programs, and I think that's probably the most common joint degree program that they see. But they do realize that if you are pursuing a joint degree, you may be even further away from actually becoming an attorney, or perhaps considering other paths outside of law. And so that's just a conversation that we want to have with all of our students as they're going through the application process.
Perfect, thank you. And then the last question we actually answered during the session, so but we'll repeat it just in case maybe you didn't hear it or you joined late. So the question is housing and transportation provided to the training program and to the internship? So the answer is no. The students or the participants, the fellows, are responsible for paying their transportation costs and for their housing while in training and throughout the summer through their internship. But as Vanian mentioned, the internships are all paid. So fellows can get anywhere between $1,200 to $1,600 per week, depending on what market they're working in. So that's typically sufficient for students to pay for their housing over the summer. And in the cases where moving to to New York City or to whatever city you're interning in cases where it is a true financial burden, as Vanian mentioned, we do offer interest-free loans that you can repay at the end of the summer once you've received compensation from your internship. And that's the last question.
Grace, I'm sorry to jump in here. I just wanted to clarify. So for our students who are placed at firms outside of New York, your firms will be responsible for covering the housing costs while you're in New York for the training program. And then for paying for the leg from New York back to whatever internship location, wherever you end up being placed. So those firms will be responsible for that portion of the cost.
Okay, yeah, thank you for clarifying that. But just to be completely clear, so that is only for students that are not interning in New York. If you are interning in New York, you do need to pay for your transportation costs to New York, correct?
That's right. So all students will have to end up paying for their transportation to New York, regardless of where they are placed. But students who are in New York once the training is over, they don't have to incur any other travel costs leaving New York from the Institute. And so we don't want our non-New York students to incur additional costs that our New York students don't have to. And so our firms will be responsible for paying for that extra leg from New York back to wherever it is those students happen to be placed.
Got it. Okay. All right. So we actually ended up getting a few more questions in the last 2 minutes, but unfortunately, given that we were already over the scheduled time, and we do want to be respectful of everyone's time. What we will do is we will actually be sending all the participants that participated in today's webinar an email tomorrow. And if your question was not answered, or if you think of any additional questions, please feel free to reply to that email, and we will respond to your question through email, or we can even potentially schedule a 10-15 minute call with you if it would be easier to potentially answer the question via email. So I just want to thank everyone who attended the webinar today. We are so excited to work with you, to review your application. I also want to thank the alumni present today and sharing their experience with you. I hope that you learned from them and are excited to hear what their experience was like. Lastly, I do want to encourage all of you to connect with us via LinkedIn. We're all on LinkedIn, so if you want to connect with us, I would encourage you to do that as well. Benny, and I don't know if you want to add any closing comments before we end the session.
No, I don't think so. We're so excited to have the opportunity to speak with you all tonight, and I feel so passionately about this program and the kind of work that we do, the types of students that we get to work with, and really do encourage you all to submit an application if you haven't already. We really do look forward to having the opportunity to meet with you all.
Excellent. All right. Well, everyone, again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, any questions that for any reason were not answered today, feel free to reply to the email that we will be sending you with any additional questions. And I hope everyone has a great rest of the evening. And again, we look forward to receiving your application. Thank you, everyone.